You all really need to chill. This is today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for the episode of today's Arsenal News Show. Thank you so much as always for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. If you could drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show, that would be greatly appreciated. I hope you've had a really, really good week so far, obviously, other than the obvious. We are kind of heading there towards the end of this week and its conclusion. The faster, of course, that we can complete this week, the faster we can be at that second leg. But there is a game to play in between. We've got Bournemouth, of course, at the weekend, which is something of a distraction, but it's also an opportunity, I think, to get the feel-good factor by winning that game. If indeed Arsenal have got the ability to choose the right team for that game. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow and, of course, on Saturday morning as well. But good morning to you all joining us live in the chat box. Really appreciate you all being here. Good morning to Black Shine, to Kiki, to Paul, to Stevie and Brian. We've got Barry T and Ken, Grantley Poos, Carl, James, Steve. We've got Kadeem. We've got Paul. We've got Gooner76 and Carlton and Amesy and Glenn. Thank you to you all for tuning in. It is greatly appreciated you being here. Thank you for listening. Let's jump into today's stories. We begin, I'm afraid, with more bad news. Arsenal's women's side, off the back of their brilliant win over Lyon, were beaten 5-2 by 9th-placed Aston Villa. And it kind of shows you, I think, where minds can go and the mindset of the team being elsewhere. They've lost 3 more games than Chelsea this season. Other than that, it's exactly the same. That's just the difference. Both have had drawn 3 times. Chelsea have been confirmed champions. They can, of course, go invincible this season with 2 more games avoiding defeat now. But it is quite the it's still quite the achievement of this women's side this season to have reached where they've reached with the changes and the upheaval of the season. And, of course, they've still got the opportunity to lift silverware should they beat a very, very good Barcelona side. I mean, the idea, of course, that Arsenal can be beaten 5-2 by 9th-place Villa and somehow go on to beat Barcelona, the best team in the world, by quite a distance. Well, that's football. It's 11 players, 1 pitch. You know, anything can happen. So let's wait and see. But disappointing result in the end in the WSL there. Into the Champions League, though, and last night played witness to what was one of the best Champions League games we've ever seen. Champions League semi-final in Barcelona. Inter Milan score after seconds with a brilliant little flick from Marcus Thuram. Denzel Dumfries with an acrobatic strike to give them a 2-0 lead and put them into dreamland before Yamin Lamal produces an unbelievable piece of technical brilliance. Then just a classic Barcelona passing move for Ferran Torres to equalise as well. Set piece goal to highlight Barcelona's frailties from set pieces and Dumfries having the absolute night of his life. And then, of course, the equaliser comes about through an amazing strike from Rafinha, hitting the back of well, I mean, when you're a goalkeeper and it hits the back of you like that and goes in the back of the net, you know that you are, well, you're in trouble. And we've seen it from Emi Martinez. We've seen it from a number of goalkeepers down the years. But the strike from Rafinha is just brilliant. And the game ends 3-3. Could have been 4-3 Inter if it wasn't for Mkhitaryan's toe being offside. Rafinha with an amazing strike towards the end of the game again as well. That guy's probably the best ball striker in the world at the moment. But my goodness me, what a game. And it was kind of the complete opposite, if you like, to the Arsenal PSG game. Much more open, much more attacking, if you like, much more clinical, of course, as well. But certainly it wasn't a spectacle. And it leaves, I think, Inter with a slight advantage, of course, going back to the San Siro with scores level. People really didn't give Inter much chance, to be honest, you know, going to Barca. They thought Barca would have a lead going into this, but what a performance really by them to have those 3 goals. But defensively, both teams found out on 3 occasions each. And a team that has, of course, conceded at least 3 goals in the semi-final will now be in the final, which will leave the opportunity for others to be open for. But yes, one of these two will be playing either Arsenal or PSG in the final. And speaking of which, there's not really too much news, as you can imagine. And so I kind of wanted to end part one as kind of a setup, if you like, for part two, which is basically about this sense of needing to chill, needing to calm down, needing to take a bit of a step back, reflect. And I've seen some commenters I've not seen for a fair few months, it's probably fair to say, coming out the woodwork and spouting their awfulness, obviously. But I think most of us just need to chill. The score is just 1 goal to PSG. The tie is still very much alive. We've already just watched Arsenal's women team go to the second best women's team in the world and put 4 past them away from home. It's very possible. You know, football is just such a chaotic sport that anything can indeed happen. Arsenal will have Partey back for that second leg as well, which obviously will be a big benefit. We can play Moreno back in the centre forward role as well, and changes can be made. It's just a kind of a madness, you know, how much. I know it was a real disappointment on Tuesday night because we all really expected something better than what we got. But I do think that the animosity, the anger, the chaos that we've seen, you know, has been way over the top in consideration. It could have been worse. Like Arsenal could have been beaten by more. You know, at the end of the game, we didn't really manage the end of the fixture too well. We opened up, we gave PSG opportunities. And it was in a way unsurprising that went down. And the fact that, you know, Arsenal are where they are, as we talk about many, many times, you know, PSG, fully fit side, no injuries whatsoever, the full squad available to them, £100 million worth of forwards coming off the bench on the night. Arsenal are pillaged in terms of players. No Havertz, no Jesus, no Calafiori, no Gabriel, no Tomiyasu, no Partey in that first leg. Massive absences, and it was incredibly tight against arguably the form side in Europe right now. So with Partey back, maybe with Calafiori, we don't know. There's still really no update on that front at the moment. But maybe Arsenal will have something to give differently. And of course, the pressure's kind of off Arsenal, if you like. The pressure's very much on PSG. They have that lead going into their home game. And all the expectation around PSG and that competition and them winning the trophy, of course, is significant. So Arsenal go there with far less to lose. They don't have a lead to lose. They don't have that opportunity to lose in the same way that PSG do. So while PSG certainly have that unity, that consistency, that availability that Arsenal do not have right now, we still have very much an opportunity to go there and get a very, very positive result indeed. So let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what happens. And let's hope that Arsenal can get the job done over in Paris. We're going to move to part two and get some of your thoughts to kind of the feeling around the place right now, which obviously is low, and some more and questions around other topics right after this. Right, this is part two of the show. For the next 15 or so minutes, we'll be tackling some of your questions and more in the chat box as well. So thank you for those of you that are indeed listening and tuning in. And those, of course, on catch up. If you've got a comment you want to leave in the comment section down below, of course, you can do that on catch up as well. The show is available on audio platforms. Those that don't want to stare at my ugly mug, or just you don't have to. You can listen on those platforms. I should probably apologize. Recently, we've had some issues on the audio side of things. Just shows for some reason I'll be like, finish the show, upload the show, make sure it's there for people, and I get a message a little bit later saying, Tom, it's the same audio as the day before. How has this happened again? How has this happened? Well, hopefully you won't need to worry about those issues going forward for too much longer. We can certainly hope that that's the case. Anyway, let's tackle some of your questions, shall we, in the chat box. That's certainly going to be the hope. Victor says Barcelona seemed disappointed after last night's 3-3 draw. You would be, wouldn't you? You know, you've scored 3 goals in the semi-final of the Champions League. You've not won the game. You're at home. You've now got to go to the San Siro. Absolutely. I'm not surprised if they would be disappointed. Damuna says, I've seen a lot of Odegaard slander on Twitter. It's not that he's bad. He's just not impactful in the final third. In the PSG game, I never saw him on the ball when we were attacking. Yeah, we talked about Odegaard at length yesterday. He's not been good enough this season. We all know that. He's had a difficult campaign. He's clearly not fit. He's clearly fighting through this injury that he's still got, but he has to play because we haven't really got too much choice at the moment. The club kind of let us down, really, in terms of adding enough depth into those areas. It was interesting, of course, to see Saka kind of move inside as well when Aeri moved to the right with a change that was made later on in the game. But, those that have said that he's hiding, I'm sorry. I didn't watch the video. I couldn't bring myself to click it, but I think I saw the headline on one of our good friend Judges' channels or Potsy's channel saying Odegaard's hiding. He's not been hiding at all. He's been dropping deep, getting the ball. He's just not been very good. It's fine saying he's not been good enough and his passing's not been great enough. It's not been accurate enough. He's not the same Odegaard as before. But the guy's not been hiding by any stretch of the imagination. He's still looking for the ball. He's still asking for the ball. He's still dropping in to collect the ball. He's just not having much of an impact right now, and he's not playing particularly well. So there's no point twisting it into something that it isn't. But also, obviously, he's not playing with a natural centre forward and hasn't done for a while. And I think, with Arsenal looking to sign players in the summer, again, when, and I feel that it is more when than if, we sign those forwards that we need to sign in the summer, you'll again see Odegaard come back next season with hopefully some more quality ahead of him and really benefiting from having a player like Odegaard, of course, behind him. Dave says, Good Legend says, certainly ducks out of challenges. I mean, to be honest, like in the situation that he's finding himself, if he's not fully fit and he's not, and we've seen the injuries that we're in right now, I kind of empathize, to be honest. And it's not like we can chuck anybody else in. We can't afford to lose him on top of everybody else that we've lost. I haven't seen it personally, but if that's what you've seen, then fair enough. I mean, I think you left an inaccurate comment yesterday, but when it comes to ducking out of challenges, I mean, he's not fully fit anyway, so probably doesn't want to make his situation even worse or ours. Dave says, in hindsight, should we have put MLS in the 6th role? Not advocating for this, but there's been chatter that it was at his academy position. Personally, I think it would have been too much. From the start, certainly it would have been way too much. He's not played a senior game at defensive midfield from the start at all. The only time we've seen him in midfield at a senior level is at the Ipswich game when he came on in the second half. I would have maybe changed things up a little bit later on in the game, but not from the start. No, absolutely not. Soup says, I have a feeling that we'll play on the counter against PSG. We only need one goal to level, and PSG will be able to resist the fan pressure to attack at home. It's going to be intriguing to see how they play the game out, indeed. John says, did you watch Match of the Day last night where they explained the change Arteta did at 20 minutes involving Odegaard? The change got us back in the game, but may have hindered Odegaard too. I didn't, John. No, I didn't watch the Match of the Day. To be honest, I definitely switched off from Arsenal for a little bit until I had to do the show in the morning. So no, maybe you can give us some insight. Afsar says, do you think Odegaard is aware at all of the fans? That I'm sure he is. Yeah, I'm sure players do get abuse sent to them directly by little cretins online that feel that it's acceptable to jump into comment sections because they've got nothing else to do in their pitiful little lives. So, of course, they see it. Of course, they get it. And they'll be blocking people. And if there's anything that goes too far, it gets reported, obviously. But yeah, they have social media, they have phones. They will see. Even if they say they don't, they definitely see it. Ruben says, a bit off topic, but I'm eyeing up Fabregas as a future manager. Not that I'm wanting Arteta out anytime soon, just very impressed with his work at Como and would love to see him. I've actually talked about this to a couple of friends before, and we talked about kind of, when the day comes that Arteta eventually does leave Arsenal, which doesn't look anytime soon. But, there are some managers, of course, out there that are young and budding. Wilshere, of course. You never know what might happen with him. Fabregas, another one, doing great things with Como, keeping them in Serie A this season and having got them there in the first place, of course. So, yeah. He, of course, learned quite a lot from Arteta. Did a lot of coaching stuff with Arsenal as well as he's come through the ranks. So, yeah, it's one to look at. Inaccurate in your opinions is Gooner Legend. Well, that's kind of how opinions work, mate. Front Yard says, Tom, given the time without him at the club, how do you feel about Edu's job at Arsenal? I think he built a good first team, but a poor squad, which is the reason for the fall off every season. I mean, it's a squad that has risen into the Champions League. It's a squad that has challenged for titles, despite the fact that no one really thinking that would happen under his tenure. But when it comes to Edu's project, he left it half-baked. He left it unfinished, and that will always be a criticism of mine towards Edu, is that he left at a point where ultimately it wasn't done, and I think he let Arsenal down. Boss Muller says, Tom, what is it with these content creators on social media saying that Arsenal are out of the Champions League when they're only 1-0 down? Because that's social media these days. That is what social media is. It's about one-upmanship. It's about trying to get under the skin of other teams, even within your own fan base. It's trying to that's what social media is. It's a world for children and entertaining children. That's what it is. So that's why content creators do it, because people lap it up. I mean, I'm not saying that you are lapping it up, but you are highlighting it. It's there. I do it too. It just happens. So it is what it is, but that is what social media is these days. King says, it's clear to see that we also need some good subs. Do you think the returning players from injury account for them, or do we possibly? No, we need to reinforce a lot. We need to bring in a centre forward, but we're not less. People talk about selling Ødegaard. I mean, the people that say we need to sell Ødegaard are making the same mistake that they don't want the club to make. The point is that you add, you don't replace. We need to add talent. We need to give Ødegaard competition so that we have greater depth in our attacking options. That's why I've been banging the Eberezer drum for a long while now. We need to sign another centre forward and keep Kai Havertz. I mean, Jesus is going to be here until the end of the season, next season, probably because of his injury, and will be another option in the second half of the campaign. We need to keep one of Trossard and Martinelli and bring in that other wide forward for me as well. One of them will probably have to go because you've already got two of them there. You're signing Partey up to a new deal. You're bringing in Zubimendi. If Partey was to go, then you'd need to replace that. You're adding. It's not about replacing star players. It's about making sure that you have and you keep your best and add to that as well. Victor says, Martin Ødegaard is on very high wages. I mean, he won the player of the season for the last 2 seasons, so I don't think that's entirely surprising, and he's the captain. Trevor says, why can't we leave players alone? We had it with Havertz and we had it with Ozil. When it's not going well. I mean, that's just the way some fans are. We do live in this YouTube world as well. You tune into this YouTube, unfortunately, less so than Twitter, but YouTube still brings with it the absolute dregs of trolling. It exists. It's still. I feel like we've got a pretty good community here overall, one of the best certainly. But you can never escape some levels of trolling. It's always going to happen, and people can live behind anonymous accounts, so they can say pretty much what they like to who they like, very cowardly. So that's what I mean. The internet is for the cowards. That's what it's for. It enables people to say and do what they like in the veil of anonymity behind them. So trust me, the comments that I get, I've never had a single person come up to me and say anything of the like in person. It just hasn't happened. It does help being 6'3", but it's never happened. I know it's happened to Harry a couple of times, he's told me, but they usually back down pretty quickly. But yeah, it's never happened. Never had anyone come up and say anything negative that I've had in a comment section or a critique on Twitter. It's just never happened in person. So I just think that sometimes you need to like look into that and realize, I don't think the internet is worth getting annoyed about. It's just not. King says, just a follow-up on my question. Who would you believe would be a good bench signing? I don't really believe in bench signings. I think you need to sign players that can be starters, and then players naturally just kind of rotate onto the bench in games, play in other games. I just think that when it comes down to the idea of having players purely from the bench, that's not the way you go out and sign players. You sign players that are good enough to start, and as a result, other players have to be benched at some games and are rotated in other games. I think that's the way it works. John says, Tom, we need to calm down. We're 1 down and a scuffed shot after 20 minutes. We're in the game. Yes, PSG could have scored another, but we had our chances too. Keep the faith and support the team. James says, I fear that Arteta is more a system than a manager, and that is what he will be his undoing. I'm not sure that he has the confidence or ability to change a game when things aren't going well. Well, we obviously know that's not true, because when Arteta came in, we didn't have the ability to play a system at all. And he started with a back three at the club and solved our defensive issues with players like Socrates and Mustafi still in the team. And we changed system to a back three and then won the FA Cup with that system, of course. And then gradually to become more competitive and to get back into the Champions League and to become an established title challenger, gradually over time, we've had to change that system into this system that we've become more familiar with. I think people have short memories, of course, and have not really taken into account the change over these number of years. We're currently playing predominantly with Mikel Merino as our striker. We couldn't have more of a difference in the way in which we played. You look at the Ipswich game as recently as, 2 weeks ago? The system was completely different. We had Trossard playing up top. We had Merino playing in midfield, but it wasn't a system of a 4-3-3. We didn't play that system at all. Merino was moving into the centre forward areas and, of course, finding the assist for Martinelli. Trossard was drifting out into the wide left position. So we know that this isn't true. We know that he's not just a system and that is it, because not only has he evolved and changed over the course of his appointment at Arsenal, but as well, just in the space of a few weeks, we've seen 3 different systems that have been used in different games to varying levels of success. So, no, obviously that's not the case. Harish says, Tom, Zinni and Jesus were very good for us, but we all agree that the team has moved forward and they can be upgraded. Why should we not look at Odegaard in the same way and upgrade on him? I think, Harish, I've just said, this is the frustrations for me, is that obviously you say something, people don't really listen and they drop it in. Odegaard needs competition. We need to bring players in that can start with instead of Odegaard, like an Eze, as we've just talked about. That could end up being an upgrade on Odegaard, which would be great. The difference between Zinchenko and Jesus is they're just not on the same level as what Odegaard is when, of course, he's fully fit and firing. We know that he is, of course, a level above those players. So that's what makes it so difficult. But again, I can't repeat myself time and time and time again. Try to take it in and take a step back before furiously typing something we've already addressed. Samuel says, I'm not keen on this as much as the next man, but with Fabio Vieira having a decent spell, do you see him staying? No, he's not good enough, with respect. He's just not of the level that we need in that position, and he should be sold in the summer. Victor says, in the last 6 semi-finals, Arsenal have not scored any goals. Are you worried? Absolutely. Mark says, in past, you were pretty confident that Partey would not be re-signed. Do you think things have changed? Yes, I think things have changed. I think that as of only a couple of weeks ago, that still was the feeling. When it has since transpired that talks have been, begun, instigated, it's a big U-turn. It's a complete 180. This is not just me being confident that he wouldn't get a new contract, but broadly, you listen to Charles Watts on his channel, who's got very good links into Partey's, into sources around the player, and he certainly didn't feel that he was going to get a new contract. So things change. That's football. Things change very quickly, and we've now seen that, and this is a great example of that. Maximus says, Tom, I think we worry too much about injuries. We should go for a win this weekend. Maintaining momentum is important. The previous draw in the Premier League and the win in the Champions League would have worked once, but winning matters. I agree with you. I think we should be starting a strong team on Saturday against Bournemouth. We need to try and win that game. Winning breeds confidence. It breeds momentum, and we need to try and do that. Club says, when we win, Arsenal is the best in the world. When we lose, many want to blow everything up. The contrast is wild. That's social media, Clive. Like that's not the everyday fan in the street. It's just not. And that's not disrespectful to say. I'm not saying it's just people that go to the Emirates. That's not what I'm saying. But social media breeds the extreme. It breeds the chaotic. It breeds unfiltered comments that you would just not say to your mates, like when you're just chilling, watching the game or whatever. It's just not the same. It breeds the extreme. And but when you do go, and when I do, and my case study, my sample group is going to the Emirates, is watching games with colleagues, but also meeting up with friends who are Arsenal fans that go, and you just never hear the same level of vitriol as you do online. It's just completely different. Even when I go abroad to the United States and I'll be in, the Globe pub in Chicago, I never hear opinions like I hear online. They just don't exist really in the real world because there's a fakery to it. There's a veil of just boring awfulness about it from kind of a desperation for attention. It's just a very loud, small minority that just seem a lot bigger than they actually are. John says Arteta has shown his tactical knowledge, how he's changed the team with all of the injuries and kept us in the top two in the Champions League. Also knows when to make tweaks, like he, of course, did in that game against PSG. And again, this is what it like. One of the comments, just as a good example, yesterday of one of the comments as well. We had the Gun Gunnarsson said the reality is biting hard. The process has failed, and Arteta's 5-year plan doesn't work. Luis Enrique is the perfect man to replace him, as Mikel can't take us any further. Time for new ideas to guide us. So, off the back of a fully fit PSG team, of course, getting a 1-goal result at Arsenal, despite the fact that Arsenal have not got so many of their big players available to them, and yet the score remains just 1 between them. And Arsenal could have easily won this game. They could have easily lost it by more. It was a very competitive fixture. Apparently that means everything is over. Now, I don't really think that's a real person, to be honest, or a real fan. But, that is kind of the good example of the extreme of the hyperbole that exists online. That's just kind of where things are. And that's why I use that picture, because it does very much feel like, as soon as there's like a little semblance of a bad result in a Champions League semi-final, despite all of the things we've had to deal with this season, they just kind of come crawling out, smelling the coffee, if you will. D. Umuna says, Tom, Rodrigo or Nico Williams. Reports are coming out that Rodrigo wants to leave Madrid. The problem is with Rodrigo is, yes, he can play on both sides, but he is more of a right-sided winger than a left-sided winger. Nico Williams is certainly a left winger, a left wide forward, if you will. I lean towards Williams on the left. But, Rodrigo is a very interesting player and is certainly not one to turn your nose up at. That is for sure. And he is right-footed, so he could invert from that left-hand side. I don't know how much he would cost, but 13 goals, 10 assists for Real Madrid this season across all competitions. And Nico Williams currently has 11 goals and 7 assists for Athletic across all competitions, having played 7 games less. So there you go. Clive says, I'm not too sensitive. Clive is very sensitive. He's a little flower. Victor says, the women's team benefited from a manager change after 6 years under Arteta. Maybe the players need a new voice. I mean, if you want a way of not looking at the bigger picture, there's the perfect comment for it. If you saw what the team in the women's side was like and where they were going under Jonas Eidevall and how they were playing, what they weren't doing, there is no comparison at all. Arsenal weren't in the Champions League semi-final under Jonas Eidevall, that's for sure. Mark says, follow up Partey's re-signing. I still want us to get Zubimendi. I mean, I'm reading this comment. They didn't even qualify for the Champions League under Jonas Eidevall. It should be pointed out in that previous season, not this season, but the previous season. So just think about that. Mark says, follow up Partey's re-signing. I still want us to get Zubimendi. If Partey re-signs, do you think that we still get Zubimendi? Yeah, of course. The Zubimendi situation has not changed. The Zubimendi situation is still very much there, and Arsenal are still working on the assumption that he is incoming. Lee says, Tom, are you looking forward to the summer break to get away from some of the nonsense? Oh, yeah. And I am going to be taking a break. Without a doubt, there will be a little period of this summer where there won't be an 8 a.m. show. I've been doing this show for 4 years without a proper break in about at least 3 years. So I'm going away on holiday in June, and I am going to go away on holiday in June. If anything big breaks, like transfer-wise, I'm sure I can put a show out one morning. But when I'm on holiday, I'm going to be on holiday. I'm going to be in a different time zone anyway. I can't jump up at 2 a.m. in the morning or whatever it is to do an 8 a.m. show. I am going to take a break. 100%. I'm going to take a break. Let's go to Maximius, who says, Tom, do you think the exchange of Saliba for Rodrigo, Valverde and Arda Güler makes sense? I don't even want to think about that. Ruben says, Rodrigo can play all across the front three, right? Seems like a very Arteta-type player. I don't know how expensive he would be. I imagine very expensive would be my assumption. And Oliver says, how much would Jorginho have helped us? Yeah, he's another player we've not mentioned as well. We could have still played with Marina up front had we have had Jorginho to play Rice at the 8. We could have had Jorginho, in the game on Tuesday, and we haven't had him either because of an absolute, what's the word, just shock, surprise, out of nowhere injury as well. Another player that we've ultimately lost. So that sucks. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in this morning. I know the mood's pretty low. I wanted to do more of a kind of a feel-good show, and I feel we've addressed a lot of that as well this morning. As also, it is Mikel Arteta's press conference tomorrow against the head of the game against Bournemouth. Of course, I'll be there to hear from the Arsenal manager, so I look forward to that. But enjoy yourselves, stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.